Hello and welcome to the Hope Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Schmalhofer, and this is episode number 36. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Hope Recovery Podcast. This episode today is a podcast on step 3 of recovery. Step 3 is certainly a foundational step. It is a critical building block for the rest of the 12 steps of recovery. The 12 steps of recovery are all about a spiritual experience with God. And this step is absolutely a critical part of this spiritual experience. Also, as a reminder, there are many great books and videos and teachings available on the 12 steps of recovery. And I encourage you to seek out many other additional resources, including the books of AA and NA themselves, as the founders of the 12 steps of recovery. Step 3 of recovery, as given by Narcotics Anonymous, states this way: we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. This step is ultimately all about making a decision, but more specifically, making a decision for God. And so the title of the episode today is simply Step 3 of Recovery. We made a decision for God. The first 3 steps of recovery are often paraphrased simply as, I can't, God can, I think I'll let Him. So briefly, in step 1, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction. In step 2, we came to believe there was a power greater than ourselves. And in step 3, we made a decision for God, for this greater power, for this higher power. The Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book on page 62 from the chapter How It Works says this about step 3. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are His agents. He is the Father, and we are His children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arc through which we passed to freedom. This quote from AA says that most good ideas are simple, and so I encourage you to not overcomplicate this step. Keep it simple. Step 3 is all about making a decision for God. And the Narcotics Anonymous book continues this message and goes even deeper when it says this on page 25, also from the Narcotics Anonymous chapter, How It Works. For all of us, the day came when there was no longer a choice. We had to use. Having given our will and lives to our addiction, in utter desperation, we looked for another way. In Narcotics Anonymous, we decide to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. This is a giant step. We don't have to be religious. Anyone can take this step. All that is required is willingness. All that is essential is that we open the door to a power greater than ourselves. And that's a quote from Narcotics Anonymous. This quote from NA also indicates that while this is a giant step, it is also a simple step, stating simply, all that is required is willingness. And so I again encourage you to not overcomplicate this step. You do not have to be religious. Anyone can take this step. As I look at step 3 of recovery, there are, in my view, 4 key principles. The first key principle of step 3 is you are not alone, as in we made a decision. The 12 steps of recovery, as given by NA, start with we, and this indicates that you do not go through recovery alone. Recovery is meant to be done in a recovery community. This is an important principle that you are not alone. While you may have been alone in your addiction, You are not alone in your recovery. And now with step 3 and your decision for God, God is with you as well. Community will include your recovery community via AA or NA fellowships, but also your faith-based recovery groups as well, perhaps via Celebrate Recovery and other faith-based recovery groups. And also, eventually, hopefully, a supportive and welcoming church fellowship as well. The second main principle of step 3 is making a decision for God, as in we made a decision. In step 3, you make a conscious decision for God. In many ways, this means you have made a decision to trust God. By trusting God, you acknowledge that God does indeed exist, and also that God is a loving, caring, and compassionate God who absolutely wants to help you. This decision may be by saying a simple prayer or by crying out to God, but it is a conscious and intentional decision for God and an intentional decision to trust God as well. The third main principle of step 3 is turning your life over to God, as in turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. The conscious decision that you make is to turn your life over to God. And this means turning your will over to God, such that now you want to seek God's will in your life, and then to live that out in your life each day, one day at a time, not to seek your own will, which was what you have done in the past, but to now actually seek to know and to follow God's will in your life. This principle also means that you start to simply trust God, to trust that God knows what is best for you, and that you can trust God to care for you, and to trust that God knows what is best for you, and ultimately that God will help you to be successful in recovery. The fourth and final principle of step 3 is start at the beginning of faith, as in, as we understood him. Making a decision for God is a decision of faith in God. It is an expression of faith in God that you now are just beginning to put your trust in God for all aspects of your life. Step 3 means to start wherever you are at in your belief in God, with whatever your understanding is of God. It is all okay. But you start with an expression of faith in God. You start at the beginning, wherever you are at with God. It does not mean you have God all figured out and that you know all the answers about God, but it does mean that you are making the decision to seek to know God more and more each day, and to seek his will in your life. And that you are turning your will and life over to God, however he may direct in your recovery and in your life as well. Step 3 of recovery can be a very freeing step. You now are letting God direct your life. Now you are not in control, but you are making the decision to turn your will and life over to God, and that you trust God with your life, and that now God is in control. Step 3 can be the very beginning of your freedom from addiction and the beginning of a brand new life as well. These 4 principles of step 3 together are summarized as, first, you are not alone, as in we made a decision. And second, making a decision for God, as in we made a decision. And then 3, turning your life over to God, as in turn our will and lives over to the care of God. And then 4th, start at the beginning of faith, as in as we understood him. Step 3 of recovery is a great step. And I believe the Bible passage of Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, relates well to this step and the decision for God and to trust God. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6 says this: Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Step 3 is a very important step. It is indeed a foundational step for your recovery. Recovery is absolutely possible, and it all begins by making a decision for God, with making a conscious and intentional decision for God, and turning your will and life over to the care of God. You can trust God to guide and direct your life and your recovery. As you trust God with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, I encourage you to submit to him, and he will direct your paths. With step 3 of recovery, begin at the beginning and seek each day to grow in knowledge of God and to know his will in your life. Recovery is absolutely possible, and it all begins with making a decision for God. I encourage you to consider making a decision for God yourself, making a personal decision for God, to trust God and to turn your will and life over to the care of God, to a loving, caring, and compassionate God who wants to help you. He wants to help you to be successful in recovery and even in a brand new life with God. That is what I have for you today. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Hope Recovery Podcast. And remember, there is always hope with God. Take care, and God bless you all.